Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. It is the Red Shadow and this is the November 2021 monthly roundup. Hopefully I'll keep this kind of short because there wasn't a whole lot of stuff that I got into for November. So we'll jump right on in with the TV stuff. I've finished watching Firefly because I was watching episodes of that while a YouTuber that I follow who does like TV and movie reactions, Vicuña, she was watching the show and then she watched the Serenity movie. She finished up the series and watched the movie like the first week of November. So I finished up my watch through, another countless, watch through of Firefly and the Serenity movie. So I don't have a whole lot to say that I probably haven't said a million times before. Firefly is fourth on my list of my top 10 TV shows. X-Files, Star Trek Next Generation, Lost, Firefly. It's a phenomenal show. It's short. People should just watch it because there's only 14 episodes in a movie. See for yourself what the big deal is. Sci-fi western, cowboys in space, yada yada yada. Great cast. Nathan Fillion leads the cast. He's one of my favorite actors. The 14 episodes are great, funny, well done, well produced, well written, well acted. The movie was kind of shunted out there to be some sort of closure and some sort of a wrap-up for the fans who were pretty upset when Fox canceled the show. I think the movie is good. I don't think it's as good as the show because it loses some of the funny, humorous, lighter-hearted tone and tries to be too much of a stock sci-fi action Hollywood movie. But it's still really, really good. And like I said, unfortunately, it's all we got. So that was basically what started my month in terms of shows / movies. The only other stuff that I really watched during the month of November was two things that I started and watched a few episodes and then didn't continue, but I am going to pick them both back up. The first one was Naruto. And I'm actually just guessing that I did this in November. It may have even been further back. But I watched the first couple episodes of the Blu-ray releases that I have, the first 4 sets of. I love Naruto the anime. It's my favorite anime. This is coming from a guy who hasn't watched a lot of anime. This is coming from a guy who owns a fair amount of anime now, of both stuff that I've heard is really good and stuff that just looked interesting and was cheap. And I bought a lot of clearance stuff from like Funimation and Right Stuff Anime over the last few years. So who knows, some of it may not be all that great. But Naruto has led the charge for so many years for me. It's been my #1 anime after I first saw it. And it's hard to tell, but back here on one of these shelves, far back in the corner, are several of the original DVD box sets. Before they started releasing them in seasons, they just did these volumes or whatever. It's kind of like the Blu-ray I just showed. It's only a certain chunk of episodes, and it doesn't say this is season 1, this is season 2. It just says here's 20 episodes. I was buying those box sets and I really wanted to get them all, but time and availability and eventually high def and Blu-ray kind of kicked my ass on that one. So I have like box sets 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, 8, 10, 13 or whatever. I missed out because I don't think I got in on them when they were first getting released. So I was picking them up from here and there, and I have this really strange incomplete collection. If there's any value to them at all, I may end up selling the DVD box sets as long as these Blu-ray sets keep coming out. But anyway, that's a little bit more of a rant on just general thoughts about Naruto. Like I said, I only watched the first couple episodes. I've barely seen beyond Naruto getting out of the the training academy or whatever it is, and going on his first couple missions. There's so much that I still have yet to see. I've heard so much about characters I've never seen in the show from people who are big fans of it over the years. So I'm just excited to take that journey. But I've talked about it before. It's movies and TV shows right now can barely compete with YouTube and games. It's why it took me a year to watch the entirety of the X-Files, despite it being my favorite show of all time. So Naruto's going to have to compete. I'm just going to have to feel like I need to sit down and watch it. So that's why it's only been like 2 or 3 of the episodes that I've watched of Naruto in November. But we'll get there. And then the last thing that I can say for sure that I watched in November was Quantum Leap. In fact, should have been a little bit more prepared for this, but here's my Quantum Leap complete series on Blu-ray. This is put out by Mill Creek Entertainment. Mill Creek is known for putting out a lot of really obscure, low-budget, random stuff. So it blew my mind when I dug this out to finally sit down and start watching some of this, that Mill Creek got, a show that's maybe not phenomenally remembered, on the levels of a Star Trek or something like that, but still a premiere-type show, in my opinion. So I bring that up only because this thing is like woefully lacking in terms of special features. There's not much to it. I don't know if there's commentary. I didn't see any kind of making of stuff, unless there's a disc somewhere buried deep within it that has that kind of stuff in it. When I went to the first season was a shorter season than the others. There's only a handful of episodes on it, but like there's just nothing really to it. It's a couple of discs. And, it just has the episodes that were on there. So I'm a little disappointed in that, but I'm still super excited to have it. It's just a great show about a guy who is like a quantum physicist and creates... It's a late 80s, early 90s show, so the budget and special effects are not there like you might expect. But he starts to leap through time based on his lifespan, and later on he finds out his family's lifespan can enable him to leap further back. And he just ends up in a random person, has to figure out what to do to help these poor souls get their lives on track, maybe avoid death, whatever the case may be. But in the meantime, Sam Beckett, the main guy here, is trapped in this. He can't exit from this sequence of leaps. So he's trying to get back home while making the world a better place. It's sort of like a couple of shows from way back when that I like that had Michael Landon in them. Little House on the Prairie, and why can't I think of the other one? He had a very, very much faith-based, religious-based, Something to Heaven. Oh, I can't believe I've forgotten that. But they were wholesome, maybe kind of hokey, kind of cheesy 80s TV shows that had a positive message to them. And sadly, on my birthday, November 7th, we lost Dean Stockwell, who played Al, who was Sam's like virtual buddy. He was somebody who was from the future that Sam came from, who was able, as a hologram, to communicate with Sam and kind of give him an idea of what he was supposed to do every time he leapt. The actor, Dean Stockwell, passed away on November 7th. I think he was 85. It's hard to believe, because first of all, I look at this show and I see him from back then, and he looked old to me. And I think at the time that character and the actor Dean Stockwell was playing in Quantum Leap, he was younger than I am right now. So it's strange the way we see things and perceive things. But anyway, can't wait to get back into that. I watched like 4 or 5 episodes in the span of 2 or 3 days, and then I've kind of fallen off. But I think that partially has to do with the gaming that I did. So I was looking back to see for sure what I had played, and I really think all I have to show for November is Far Cry 6, which I beat, but I was playing that pretty hot and heavy the first few weeks of the month. And then I played some of the first Castlevania, which if you just watched my pickups video, I talked about playing Castlevania off of that anniversary collection that Limited Run Games put out physically for PS4. And then most recently, I started playing Guardians of the Galaxy. But let's start with Far Cry 6, because I kind of want to just put my thoughts out there on where it ranks for the other Far Cry games that I've played. Far Cry 3 was really awesome. Built heavily on just the open world, first person, explore a large area, do certain things. You know, the radio towers, the outposts, the bad guys. A story that was there, but it's not going to shock the world. It's not going to, be the most amazing thing that you've ever dabbled in, but has one really, really good, amazing antagonist in a villain named Voss. But he's only there for part of the game, and the main villain is nowhere near as amazing. But it's just a real fun game on a tropical island. You play as a punk-ass, rich college-age guy and his friends. There's not a lot there to endear you to those characters. But it's the gameplay. Far Cry is one of the few series that I'm into that I'm driven way more by the gameplay, although I appreciate the characters and the stories. It's the gameplay loop that always does it for me. So 3 is up there pretty high for me. 4 is in a different area, different kind of environment, different story, different characters. Still an interesting villain in Pagan Min. But Pagan Min maybe takes a little bit more of a backseat in that. So 4 isn't as high up for me as 3. Then you've got 5. 5 gets a big boost from me because it's more Far Cry and I love it, but it takes place in Montana, someplace I've lived a lot in my life. It made me feel like I was back home. I can run around in that game and really enjoy what's going on in it. 5 has kind of been at the top of my Far Cry list since I played it, just because of that connection that I have. Voss is still a better villain than any of the Seed family from 5, but 5 is still super fun. New Dawn was like the spin-off of that. Takes place in the future after the events of the Far Cry 5 ending. It's a fun little diversionary kind of game. I enjoy it, but it's not as high up for me as 5 and 3. Far Cry Primal takes place in caveman era, and it's a fine enough game, but I'm more of a gunplay guy. I like sniper rifles, I like powerful pistols, I like grenade launchers and shit like that. Taking those out of my hands and putting spears and bow and arrows are a turnoff. So when I've played that game, I found myself being I like this one the least. It's not bad, it's just my least favorite Far Cry game. So 6 comes along. What does 6 have going for it for me? The best and biggest open world in any of the Far Cry games. Bar none to me. It has beach and island areas. It has mountain areas, wooded areas, cities. The first time we've really had city streets and lots of activity and people and all that kind of stuff going on. And one really big city, but lots of little smaller cities felt really lived in and immersive. They didn't just feel like a couple of buildings and nothing's going on. So I love the open world. The gameplay, pretty much more of the same. They did take away some things. This is something I mentioned somewhere, but I don't know if I mentioned it on any of my videos. They took away some of the stuff like kill somebody, run up, press a button, and you loot their body. They just made it now where if you walk close enough to the body, you pick up the stuff. I missed it at first, but after a while I was kind of okay with it because sometimes the action is chaotic and you can't really stoop over a body because there's 3 more, Humvees or vehicles coming up the road, and 3 more, sets of bad guys trying to shoot you. So if you can just run across them, it's a quality of life improvement, I guess. Convenience, maybe a little too much of that sometimes in these games. But at the same time, the game has a lot of over-the-top action that wasn't there in some of the previous games, and that's fine as well, too. They have these things called Supremos, these badass weapons that go on a backpack on your characters, on your character himself. I only used the one that shot missiles because they would take down helicopters very easily and destroyed so much stuff. I play that game again, or if I decide I want to go back and try to platinum and clean up some trophies, maybe I'll try out the other things. But I just really couldn't get over how much fun it was to play with that particular weapon. So gameplay was really, really fun. The loop was fun. Outposts were gone with different things, military targets, bases, and checkpoints thrown in. It's half dozen of one, 6 of the other. It doesn't really matter. I want to say, because the camera is saying my battery's getting low, I didn't realize it was going to go this fast, but I want to say that Giancarlo Esposito, the actor who's from Breaking Bad and Mandalorian, played the villain in this, and his performance is great, but this is one of the weaker villains in my opinion, because maybe it was diluted because I was playing a lot of side stuff and cleaning things off the map before I would go do a few story missions. But he just didn't feel present like some of the other bad guys. Voss felt like he was more in the game. Pagan Min at least would talk to you over like radio transmissions and loudspeaker things while you're going through 4. The Seeds sometimes literally ripped you out of missions and things you were doing. And there seemed to be so little link between his character, whose name I'm blanking on now, so I guess that kind of shows you what I'm feeling, but it was just a disconnect. I liked the character. I played as a male Danny Rojas, and the voice acting and all that kind of stuff was nice. There was lots of characters, and interesting characters I've created bonds with, I felt like, as I was going through it. Overall, Far Cry 6 was just good, but not quite as good as my favorites, so I'd have to put it behind like 5 and 3. Okay, so Castlevania, I cracked into the very first game. It's difficult, it's old, I didn't play those kind of games back in those days, so I'm struggling with it a little bit, but my intention was to play as many of those games, even if I don't beat them on that collection, just to be like, I did it. So I'll have more to say about that as I play more. I just played for probably like an hour or 2 one day. And then I started Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy. That game is really, really awesome. I really enjoy it. If I had to boil it down to a quick little soundbite or something to compare it to, it's like a Last of Us, a God of War. It's like one of those single-player narrative games where you have a cutscene, you talk to some characters, you move on to gameplay section, you go through a bunch of that, then you get another cutscene. They have the Milano, the ship, and in between missions you'll sometimes be on there and you'll interact with the members of the team. I found myself wishing that the Guardians of the Galaxy had 1 or 2 more members, because it just felt like Star-Lord, and then you have Gamora, and Gamora's like the only real adult of individual you really deal with, because Drax is so weird and his no sarcasm, no fun, and then Groot, you can't understand Groot. Rocket is there to translate, but Rocket's just feisty as hell all the damn time. You're butting heads with that guy all the time. But, oh, my camera, I don't even know if it's still recording. Alright guys, well, sorry for the abrupt cut there. The battery just melted away on me. Completely died. Usually I can go for a while talking when it's alerting me to it, the few times that I've had to do it. So I don't remember exactly what I was saying, but something along the lines of wishing there was more characters in the Guardians of the Galaxy to interact with. There's 5, but you've got Groot that you can't understand, Rocket who's just a feisty little asshole most of the time, and Drax who's that strange, no sarcasm, doesn't seem to get the jokes. Although they really do a lot. At the point in the game where I'm at, they've done a lot to flesh out his character. I just kind of wish there were more people. It feels sort of like the Star-Lord and Gamora show and a few other people back here, doing their thing. Sorry to anybody who likes those characters. I'm not trying to sell them short. I love the 2 Guardians movies that I've seen, and this game so far is really, really awesome and compelling. That's all the experience that I have with Guardians, though. I didn't read any of the comics or any of that. So, like I was saying, I love the gameplay loop of, cutscene, play through an area, cutscene, play through an area, finish an area. Some of the levels that I played in go on for quite a ways. I don't mean like drag on. I just mean like they're really fun. And I got to talk about the combat here in a moment, but I have enjoyed, like I said, the loop, and the writing is phenomenal, the acting is phenomenal. The couple of downers that I have, though, begin with the gameplay. I knew going into it, I'd watched things, I'd read things, I'd seen things that suggested that you were only going to play as Star-Lord. You weren't going to be able to actively jump from character to character. That instead you were going to press a button and a thing pops up, and then you can direct commands to each of your other teammates. That's cool, that's fine and all, but I found that to be really difficult to do in a lot of fights, even with the slowdown mechanism that was in place that slowed the action down behind you while you're going through this. It still kind of sucked to be I've got a dodge button, and I've got, a button to shoot, with Star-Lord's guns. Well, now I want to press, I think it's L1 button, and bring up this little diamond-shaped type grid that shows the 4 characters, and then you're going to press a button to select one of those characters, and then that character has another diamond-shaped grid with 4 attacks, which you open up those attacks. It starts off with just 1. You can dump points in as you're defeating enemies and getting through combat moments. Once you get a certain number of points, then you can dump those points and unlock their other special abilities. They have 3 that you can point up, and then they have 4th ones that get discovered along the way and pivotal moments for the characters. Then they unlock an ability. I have at least 1 or 2 characters who have unlocked their 4th ability before I was able to pour points in to get all 3 of their others. But that whole bit, even with the gameplay slowed down, I found myself sort of being man, this is a lot of stuff going on all at once. I've got to press this button and select which of the people are available to do something, because once you do one of their attacks, then there's a cooldown period. There's some time you have to wait for they can do another thing. There's also effects in battle if they're getting really waylaid. There's certain attacks that enemies can do that can take them down, so to speak, for lack of a better way of saying it. Sometimes they're under duress, or they're incapacitated in some way. And so you're looking at all that stuff. It reminds me of why I hate subtitles in movies and whatnot, where it's you need to read what's going on instead of being able to just watch and absorb the action. I'm I have to now look at this little thing over here and decide who has an attack and which attack should I do. Some of them kick major ass, and some of them are just, powerful and effective. It's too much for me. It's a little too much for me to juggle. I'm sure for some people, there's nothing to it, and they do just fine with it. And maybe if I wanted to play the game over and over and over again, maybe I would get adept to it way quicker, to a point where I would be happy with it. But right now, in a lot of ways, I was just sort of it's too busy, it's too noisy, too much stuff going on. And I would much rather just kind of like go in as one character and kick ass, or do something like the Final Fantasy VII Remake, where you can leap from character to character and play as them in a fight. It seemed like there was something else that I wanted to bring. Oh, yeah. And this is more, I guess, a complaint on the art style, and this may not even be against artists on the game itself from the dev team. This may go back to Guardians, because I feel like this was something I noticed in the movies, but it's way more prevalent in the game. A lot of the worlds are the same kind of splashy, colorful, and very samey looking, like planets. There wasn't enough, so far there hasn't been enough diversity in the environments that I'm playing in. But that, like I said, I'm sure that's very, very subjective to me and might not bother other people. And like I said, if that's the art style in the comic books, then that's where it comes from. And then, like I said, then the complaint really does fall on the original artists. And I don't like to slate somebody for something like that. That's their vision of it. It just, for me, I was like, even in Far Cry 6, I felt like, although it's one singular place, there's enough diversity in it. It's not like Far Cry 3 was tropical island. Far Cry 4 was like in the Himalayan mountains. Far Cry 5 is in Montana in the U.S. Far Cry 6 it's in one area. It's supposed to be sort of like Cuba. And I don't know anything about what Cuba's topography is like. But in Far Cry 6, it's still a lot of variety to it. And I just felt like in Guardians of the Galaxy so far, this game hasn't shown me as much variety as I would like, so that it wouldn't stand out to me and I'd be like, oh, I don't really like that much. So it's just a little nitpick. It's stupid, I'm sure, but it was the only other thing I can really think of so far, aside from the cluttered, busy nature of the battle system in this. It was just that some of the environments are same-ish, and it just puts me off a little bit. But that's it. I can't wait to beat it. I should have had it beat this past weekend. Not that it matters, because that's still December. So I'll talk more about that at the end of the month when I do the monthly roundup for December. And that was it. I looked. I mean, I've bought some digital games, but I haven't touched any of those. Stuff on the PC. Like, I just don't really have anything else. November basically was Far Cry, a little bit of Castlevania and Guardians of the Galaxy, Naruto, and Quantum Leap. And that's been pretty much it. So, alright, this video probably wasn't as short as I was hoping it would be, but hey, we're done. We survived the battery dying on me in the middle of it. And I will be back soon with other videos that I had planned. It's a promise to anybody who's watching who gives a shit, but more of a promise to me to just be like more active in this. This is always fun. Now that I've sat down and done this, I really enjoyed it. I need to try to figure out how to maintain that. Alright, so that's it, guys. Thanks for watching. I'm the Red Shadow, and we'll see you next time.